Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Welcome to the Indonesia Pavilion at COP28. We are delighted to welcome you here in Dubai. My name is Claudia Johan, staff at the Coordinating Minister of Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia. This year, the Indonesian government's theme for the COP28 conference is stronger renewable energy commitments. Therefore, in line with this theme, we will take stock on the JETP progress. In fact, today's event marks the first public discussion since JETP launched its Comprehensive Investment and Policy Plan, or CIPP, last month in Jakarta. Today's event is a collaboration between the Coordinating Minister of Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia and Standard Chartered Bank. Distinguished guests, the Government of Indonesia views energy transition as a key strategy to building a green economy future for Indonesia and to also meeting the country's commitment for the Paris Agreement. JETP has been viewed as a critical piece of Indonesia's green energy transition. But its success lies on the collaboration between Indonesia and the international stakeholders. 1 year has passed since JETP was announced last year during COP27 and G20 in Bali. It's now time for us to execute the plan. Today, we are honored to have a lineup of esteemed guests who will share their knowledge and experience on this matter. But first, I'd like to turn your attention to the screen to watch a heartfelt remarks from the Coordinating Minister of Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia, the Honorable Minister Luhut Binsar Panjaitan.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to Indonesian Pavilion at COP28. Unfortunately, I cannot join you in person today for this important session on the energy transition partnership. I'm delivering this message with a sense of optimism and urgency. The launch of the JETP Comprehensive Investment Plan and Policy marks milestone in Indonesian commitment to addressing the climate crisis. It also demonstrates the collaboration between Indonesia as a developing nation and developed nation. I'm pleased to share that the CIPP offers nearly 1,000 prospective green projects in need of financing. The concrete is expected to provide clarity for those wishing to seize the opportunity presented by the Indonesian energy transition. However, the JETP partnership has made us realize that we still have much work to do. The world needs a new paradigm of climate financing. And I believe again we have to do it together. Otherwise, this JETP program is not going to be moved forward like we expected. As President Joko Widodo stated 2 weeks ago, in his lecture at Stanford University, the available climate financing mostly adopts as business as usual approach. This business as usual return on capital, which may burden developing economies, and we need to find better way to mobilize and share technology and capital so a developing nation can continue grow and prosper. Otherwise, it's going to be also another new problem in the near future. I'm confident that today's session will provide a platform for open and constructive dialogue on the Indonesian energy transition. Let us find ways to align climate financing partnerships, global effort to mitigate the climate crisis. And developed nations need countries like Indonesia. Together, let us harness the power of collaboration and innovation to pave the way for a more sustainable future for Indonesia and the world. Again, I would like just to emphasize, I think collaboration between developing countries and developed countries is so important in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Luhut Binsar Panjaitan. Ladies and gentlemen, up next, I am pleased to welcome on stage our co-host for this event, a leader whose support and deep involvement have been critical in the launch of the JETP agreement. Please join me in welcome to the stage Mr. Bill Winter, Group CEO of Standard Chartered Bank.
Thank you much, and thank you very, very much. And I'd like to welcome everybody here. It's a pleasure to be co-hosting this event, especially with Pak Luhut, who made some very clear and inspiring comments. And in fact, I think his inspiration is for all of us to take a good reflective look a year and a bit after the fact and say, what's working, what's not, how can we get this done? Because what Pak Luhut has said very clearly is that the opportunity for us, if we can execute this JETP, together with the investment program that the government has so forcefully set out, the opportunity is nothing short of transformational for the impact that we can have on carbon emissions, not just in Indonesia, but around the world. You know, what do we mean by this? Let's start with the idea that we can come up with a financing facility that allows owners and operators of coal-fired power plants to terminate the operation of those plants 10, 15, 20, 25 years earlier than would otherwise be the case. We all know that Indonesia is a young country, growing very quickly, with a tremendously fast-growing need for power in order to affect their own transition in a way that's just. So not depriving the population of the opportunity to grow, but at the same time, making the transition to a net zero economy by 2060, as the government has so clearly set out. There's no mechanism today for financing that early termination of coal-fired power plants. But you've got a combination of the JETP country partners who have very forcefully said, we will help with this, together with key private sector participants, including banks like Standard Chartered Bank, that have said, we'll create the mechanisms. Be clear what the underlying economic and political agreement is, required legislation passed, etc. We'll understand what the economic cost is. We'll find a way, whether it's issuing carbon credits or offsets, into the international market to finance what would otherwise be an uneconomic transition. Now, can anyone expect the people of Indonesia to take on an unlimited amount of uneconomic activity? Of course not. That would be the opposite of a just transition. But can anybody expect the investors of the world to finance this without a pretty clear set of rules around, you know, what's in it for me? How do I know for sure that these emissions are going to be terminated in 15, 20, 25 years? Right? These are the critical details that have to be worked out. Now, when I look at the investment program that Indonesia has put out, which is clear in its ambition, clear enough in the detail, now we have to take that obviously to the next step of precise detail. I look at the willingness of international partners to help finance that transition, do that in a just way, tap into the private sector to create the facilities, the underlying market, to allow this to happen in a not just a safe and sound way, but also in a very robust way. I'm hopeful that we can deliver the solution here. Now, Standard Chartered Bank has been operating in Indonesia for over 150 years. We have a very strong presence on the ground. We're deeply committed to the economic development of the country and its people, and we're deeply committed to doing our bit to contribute to a net zero economy for the world over the next 27 years. Indonesia has got to do its part. This discussion today, I think, can help take us one large step closer to making that dream a reality. So thank you very much for joining us. And I'll hand back to our moderator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Winter, for your encouraging message. Up next, we have another distinguished speaker joining us today, Dr. Mari Elka Pangestu, Special Envoy for the Global Blended Finance Alliance for the Republic of Indonesia, also a former World Bank Managing Director for Development Policy and Partnership. Dr. Mari also served in the cabinet in a different terms as a trade minister and Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic Indonesia. Dr. Pangestu, the stage is yours.
Thank you, and welcome to the Indonesia Pavilion on this very momentous event where we will be hearing the progress of the Just Energy Transition Partnership, or JETP, of Indonesia. I'm so happy to see such a full room, which indicates to me you're either very curious about what's in the JETP, and that's very encouraging because hopefully we will have a lot to say about that. Because there is actually a lot of hype around the JETPs, what they can and cannot do, as Bill Winters just said. And as we all work to mobilize capital for climate, and what matters the most is that the Indonesia's JETP is offering a blueprint and many lessons learned, I would say, by both sides. I think Pak Luhut in his message mentioned about developed and developing countries. I think this is one of the first, I guess, of these types of partnerships. So I hope that both sides learn from each other. And it is also Indonesia's intention in the climate space to lead by example. We don't just want to be talking, we also want to do. So we want to do by leading by example. I know, looking at the numbers in this room, that there are many people actually dissecting the investment plan, the Comprehensive Investment and Policy Plan, CIPP, that was launched last week, very carefully and looking at it line by line, perhaps, which coal assets will see early closure, and trying to get a glean on the breakdown of the donor funds and understand the channels through which they will be deployed. I kind of remember 2 years ago at the Finance Day at Glasgow when Sri Mulyani was on the same panel as Mark Carney, and Mark Carney was talking about the 13 trillion that's available from the private sector, and Sri Mulyani simply said, well, Mark, I only need $280 billion of the 13 trillion that you have, and we have the plan of what we want to do. And that was actually, I would say, the seed and the beginning of the idea. And 1 year later, when we had the G20 meeting, that's when the Just Energy Transition Partnership was born with the IPG. But today, what I wanted to talk more about the JETPs is not line by line and to see what's in there and what's not in there. I wanted to talk about what the JETPs can do at the very broad and principle level, and how we can inspire the world. This is how we have titled this session today, and how will we know if we are succeeding? So first, JETP helps to create a framework for different conversations across governments, with business, with investors, about what the real economy needs to look like to be resilient to shocks and to support sustainable and inclusive development. I myself, I've been in government, I've been everywhere. I thought it was a miracle that PLN and the energy minister could sit together and come up with the IPG partners to approve the CIPP, right? So I would say that's a big round of applause to all those who have worked hard on both sides to make this happen. Second, to have long-lasting impact, JETP should underpin climate-positive growth, help create jobs in new industries like EV, like renewable energy, and support more resilient economy in the future. Third, it must be responsive. If JETP is going to drive growth and prosperity, it must respond to the needs of the countries with the right type of capital for the right activities. Public money shouldn't go where private sector can invest, and vice versa. Actually, I think, Donnie, you mentioned this yesterday. We had another session in Jakarta the other day on sustainable finance. Fourth, JETPs should be efficient. They should fundamentally reduce the transactions cost of accessing the right kind of concessional capital. They should quickly match the private sector with partners in country, and they should help build pipeline of not just bankable projects, but transformative projects with a clear link between the national climate goals and the infrastructure plans. Finally, JETPs can help to send a clear signal about a country's national policy and priorities to support the transition. And frankly, I would say, I don't know whether my friends in government agree, I think it has shifted the way we think in government and collectively in a coordinated way. And you could say, if you look at the record, just in the last 1 year, there have been a number of reforms and changes in regulations that have happened. Maybe it's not fully completed yet, but there is a start. And I would say having this platform where you had these conversations going really actually helped to do that. And I would say it's one of the biggest stakeholder outreach involving all communities that have happened in recent time. So with this signaling, JETP should help reduce the perception of risk. The risk that emerging countries have, countries like Indonesia, which as the GFANZ partners to the JETP know well, Indonesia is a country that has real track record in implementing blended finance solutions at scale with SDG Indonesia and the energy transition mechanisms and many more. So what I'm saying is that a successful JETP should be catalytic. That's the key word. Indonesia has shown a strong commitment to provide a holistic transition pathways framework. And this needs to be matched with fit-for-purpose financing and funding from IPG as well as from the private sector. It should use concessional funds to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy. It is also about speed, moving faster to decarbonize key industries than the market would otherwise do. It cannot be business as usual, as our president called for. Ultimately, this is all about partnerships, working across the public, the private, and the philanthropic sectors, as well as civil society and communities, to develop the right pipeline of transformative projects, connect the transition as a driver of climate-positive growth and prosperity, and make sure that no one is left behind. The word just is there for a reason. We should not leave anybody behind. We are so excited to partner with so many on Indonesia's pioneering JETP, especially having integrated the private sector from the beginning. I think that's very important. Involving the private sector from the beginning ensures that we can focus on developing commercially viable projects. And together, Indonesia is exploring alternative sources of capital, including carbon, to support early decarbonization of coal plants and call on everyone here together to work together to get there faster. I'm going to repeat my favorite word, which is about collaboration. And I think the President and Pa Luhut just mentioned there. I think it has to be more than collaboration. It's about collaboration and co-creation between developed and developing country partners, between public and private sector and philanthropy and so on. So it's co-creation is the key word. And let me now close with a message from our children, from our grandchildren, in the words of Greta. There is no time for blah, blah, blah anymore. We are at the COP and we need to get going. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pangestu, for a very powerful message. Indeed, collaboration is a key to soldier on with impact. Thank you so much again, Dr. Pangestu. Now, we are still waiting for a representative joining us from the Special Envoy for Climate from the United States of America. But I would like to invite actually all the keynote speakers and panelists to come on stage to take a family photo first before everyone is leaving. Would invite Mr. Bill Winters to come on stage, Dr. Pangestu, and all the keynote speech for the panel session to come on stage. Alexia Rahmat Kaimudin, Tomoyoshi Yahagi, Darmawan Prasojo, and Doni Rino Dono Saputro for a family photo together. Let's give a round of applause to all the speakers. Thank you so much again, Mr. Winters and Dr. Pangestu, for an awesome remarks. Now, we would like to continue to a panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, a panel discussion today will be moderated by a distinguished figure in the global financial landscape, Mr. Mark Carney, co-chair, GFANZ, and UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. I would also like to invite, joining Mr. Carney today on stage, we have 5 distinct speakers. Please join us on stage. Alexia Lotortu, United States Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for the International Markets. Muhammad Rahmat Kaimuddin, Deputy of the Coordinating Minister of Maritime Affairs and Investment in Infrastructure and Transportation. Tomoyoshi Yahagi, Deputy Director General, Ministry of Finance, Japan. Darmawan Prasojo, CEO, PLN, Indonesia State-Owned Electricity Company. And finally, I would like to invite Doni Rino Donoseputro, Vice Chairman, Asian Standard Charter. Mark. Mark. What? Give me one moment. I think we're still waiting for Mark Carney to come join us at the pavilion. Okay. Wait. Okay, awesome. Unfortunately, today, we just heard that Excellency John Kerry won't be able to attend this session due to some leadership commitment. So it will be representative by Rick Duke, Deputy Minister, Special Envoy for Climate for the United States of America. Rick, the stage is yours.
Cops. So thrilled to be here, thrilled to see such a strong turnout and crowd for what is such an important partnership. And I am also pleased to note that this partnership is really at the heart of dealing with keeping a safer climate future within reach. When we look across what's required for addressing the climate crisis, it's really 3 things. It's the energy transition, it's stopping deforestation, and it's cutting non-CO2. Indonesia is at the forefront of all of those, but in particular, this JETP partnership is really giving us a basis to do the work together as a partnership in order to have Indonesia really at the forefront of transitioning from fossil and unabated fossil specifically to clean power. And the answer for every industry and every country is similar, which is that we need to find pathways to allow for faster scale up of renewables, all the associated work that needs to be done on transmission, on storage, and planning to pull that all together, and the investment that's required to actually complete what is fundamentally a massive substitution of capital investment in those things, poles, wires, batteries, solar panels, and hydropower, and you name it, for the normal ongoing costs of using fossil fuels in the traditional sense. And so with this Just Energy Transition Partnership, Indonesia and partners are doing that work. As Pak Rahmat has at times called it, the JETP doesn't guarantee success, but it's like having a personal trainer for the energy transition and make sure that you can work through all that's required. And we appreciate that metaphor. And the work is well underway. And I'll say that This is true for the United States as well. We have a tremendous energy transition of our own underway with major legislation in place through the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, which gives us a platform for all the investment required, but it still requires a tremendous amount of effort to implement all that, to build the transmission, et cetera, et cetera. And I am really pleased to note that today, my boss, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, joined on behalf of the United States, the Powering Past Coal Alliance that continues and really deepens the United States' commitment to phase out unabated coal to meet our goal of 100% clean power in the United States by 2035. But look, there's no one-size-fits approach to all of this. There is a tailored approach that's required, and I think the JETP has really shown through the investment planning process, through the dialogue, through the frank and at times quite challenging work together, that these solutions and these energy transitions have to be case by case, and Indonesia has to define and is defining for itself the path in order to really make it happen and happen as quickly as I know our colleagues from Indonesia want it to happen. So with that, I'm going to just really express my appreciation to all the partnership here and to really welcome the investment plan and to, I'm not sure who I'm turning it to next here, but appreciate the chance to be here for this celebration of so much progress in just 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick, for your remarks. As we wait for Mr. Carney to join us, thank you, Alice, for taking the stage for the first half minutes until we wait Mr. Carney to arrive. Over to you, Alice.
Thanks very much, Claudia. I know it's disappointing that Mark is running a bit late, but for me it's a great opportunity, actually, because it's actually my team and everyone in this room who've been working super hard this last year to support the government of Indonesia on their efforts on the CIPP. And I couldn't be more delighted that there's a plan and that we're now going to start implementing the plan. And so this panel is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate all the hard work of everybody here, all the high ambition of everybody here, and the aspirations for green growth in Indonesia. I think a year or so ago when we decided to all take this leap of faith with the Indonesian JETP, which is obviously the biggest agreement of its kind globally, it was a leap of faith. We didn't know how it was going to play out. We've been, building the plane as we fly it. But we're still here. We're still flying. So we haven't got there yet. So we've got to keep building. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm really, really happy to have this distinguished panel here today. We've got Pat Ratmat, who's been, his team have been leading the work, which, and under the great leadership of Pavilion, who couldn't be with us today, but we know he's itching to get back into action and carry on this work. And we've got Pat Darmo, who is the heart of the operations. Obviously, PLN have a critical role to play in this work, and we're super excited to all be collaborating on this together. And we've got Alexia, who's with the Japanese Ministry of Finance, has been leading the charge for the IPG, and I know he's going to talk about this new approach to collaboration and country-led transition efforts. And we've got Pat Donny, who has been, I think, very instrumental in keeping us all sane and on track over the last year. He's obviously been thinking about how to finance projects as well, because he's a banker. But he's also been giving us all very wise counsel, so that's fantastic. Great. So I think we're going to start with Pat Ratmat, and we're going to start by, as I mentioned, this is the biggest agreement of its kind. As you've said many times to us privately, this has been a real marathon. A real marathon, more than a marathon, ultra marathon every day for the last year, but we have a plan. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what the CIPP, the priorities in the CIPP, and the ambition that you're setting out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. So basically what is the CIPP launch signifies? I think for us, the first thing is to show that Indonesia is open for business in renewable. So maybe, before we start this JETP process, there is this myth that Indonesia may not want to do this, or they don't really, or not really ambitious. Maybe the myth is based on facts, some. But what we say is, no, I think we want to do it. But we want to do it such that, we want to do it right. We want to do it that is just, right? We want to do it that is actually doesn't impact our development. To be honest, that is the only order that I got from my boss, Pak Luhut. He said, we will do all this, but never sacrifice Indonesian development. So that is the only thing. And I think we signify that. We look at the CIPP, there's a lot of projects worth tens of billions of dollars, and all that will show our ambitions and our interest. So open for business. The second thing, that when we recognize that Indonesian JETP is very, as Bu Mari said, hyped. We announced it in G20, all the world's eyes are looking at us. We want to also use the opportunity to help, welcome, Mark. Yes, okay. Alice has been doing a great job. So.
Quality is about to go down tremendously. I apologize. Let me start, and I'll pass back, Pak Rahmat. Let me apologize. I was coming from this Global Decarbonization Accelerator announcement, which ran on, so I apologize for that. But this is crucial, and what you're launching into, I think, is an explanation of the CIPP, I suspect, right? So if I can allow you to continue, and then we'll dig down into exactly how we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Good to see you.
So what we recognize is that this is a very big opportunity as the eyes of the world are looking at us to learn about what is just transition means. Because Indonesia is actually very interesting case, right? We are a developing country, we want to industrialize, we have a lot of needs, we are powered by fossil. So if we can work together with everyone to show what are really the problem. So what we said is we opened our kitchen. So we invited the IPG members, we invited International Energy Agency, we invited UNDP, the World Bank, ADB, to say hey, let's cook this together. So it's kind of like Master Chef. Everyone can see what's going on in Indonesia. So, because we want to be transparent, and hopefully, I would say, everyone learned something in this process. With Alexia, with Rick, who unfortunately have heard too much about my complaints and everything. So I keep saying this is going through a boot camp or personal trainer. And to show our ambition, we pick the biggest and the baddest of all the personal trainers, which is the US government and the Japanese government and all the G7. So if we cannot do this right, we cannot be fit after this. But of course, I said, my personal trainers has to be fitter than we are. So everyone has to work out together. So I think with that, open for business showed international collaboration. Of course, we also learned a few things that we cannot be perfect day one, but we can do something meaningful right now. And that is what we believe the CIPP signifies. We have a plan that if we do it right, we'll lower emissions significantly, or the peaking. But of course, it assumes certain things which may or may not be available today. So we said, okay, let's do with what we have, because keep blah, blah, blah is not going to reduce emission. Every breath we take increase emission, right? So let's execute and then close this CIPP. And then whatever that we don't know yet, we will learn more moving forward. And what we know, what we are sure, let's execute. So I think that's what the CIPP signifies today.
That's fantastic. Very good. And Pak Darmo, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I'm just going to ask one sort of clarifying question. I like the mixture of metaphors of both master chef and personal trainer at the same time, which is a good combination. But if you were to take a couple of those lessons, and let me underscore one thing, which I think is clear, and Bill and Donnie and others have been, and obviously the U.S. Treasury and Japan have been hugely helpful in this, is there is a new level of transparency and understanding of the strengths and the challenges. But if you were to take, if you can give me two of those lessons applied to whether it's policy reforms or priorities or that impinge or influence on the financing options for here, just a perspective on that, and then Pak Dharma, I'm going to come to you from PLN's perspective on this. So,
yeah, maybe this is not something that people want to hear, right? But that is the fact. For example, when we started this discussion, I remember it was in DC, in maybe around the winter break, winter UN. There is a request that says Indonesia should not build more coal-fired power plant. It has to be complete moratorium, otherwise everything is off. So we have to explain that these are all the situations. If you look at the Indonesian, like, do you know that Indonesia has 17,500 islands across 3 time zones? Do you know that some of these factories that the energy need may not have potential renewables there? Do you know that we don't have the grid that is well connected and it's not even smart? Therefore, if we just do this, there is a risk that some people will not get the energy is needed. But of course, we need to create some policies to restrict, to limit all this, and we can be open to that. So those are the kind of conversation, maybe I would say no silver bullet, in this. Sometimes you have to look into some solutions that you have to look at all the possible solutions as long as it's reduced emission.
okay, it's very helpful. I think this key point that was underappreciated going in is the distributed nature and the variegated nature, if you will, of the power system in Indonesia, given the geography, given the history, and how to have frameworks around that so that the decarbonization can proceed. So the man who's in charge of that system, Pak Dharma, if I can come to you, you're absolutely on the front lines, and I really just invite your perspective, given some of the lessons learned, given the CIPP, how you think about implementation, where you see the priorities should be.
Well, we understand that the journey of humankind is facing a very serious threat. Yeah. The Earth is warming. So we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We understand that one. And we need to slow down the warming if it's possible to cool the Earth. But we also understand that this is requiring a transition of energy that currently entering a very critical phase. Why we call it critical? Because it offers so many challenges, yeah, but in the same time, magnificent opportunities. Yeah. We also understand that this is a global challenges. When we're talking about SOx, we're talking about NOx, particulate matters. When we take care of it, the area is going to be cleaner. But when we're talking about greenhouse gas emission, 1 ton emission of CO2 here in Dubai is going to have the same damage effect with the 1 ton emission in Jakarta, in Washington, D.C., all over the place. So we also understand that this is a global challenges in which PLN, the National Electric Company, is not going to be able to do this alone. So, and then at that time is also, I was studying about the climate change in the US, my doctorate degree, my dissertation in climate change, and all of a sudden I'm becoming the CEO of PLN, own and operate among the largest coal, becoming the Darth Vader, joining the other side. So, it was so complex at that time, and suddenly there is a JETP. So what is a JETP for us? is a platform that shifting previously fragmented stakeholders to become unified. I can share with you, I couldn't imagine that PLN, domestically in Indonesia, PLN, with the coordinating Minister of Maritime and Investment, Bu Nani, Pak Rahmat, from the Ministry of Finance, with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, of Ministry of Environment, State-owned enterprise, and PLN, we have twice a week meeting for the whole 4 months because of this JETP. This JETP is galvanized the whole component of the stakeholders previously fragmented to become unified, not only at the national level, not only at the regional level, but also at the international level. Applause for the JETP. In that regard, the first thing that we felt is this: we're facing this challenge not alone. We're facing this challenge together. So it's giving us a strong convictions, no matter the challenge ahead, we're going to be able to keep moving forward and to get the mission accomplished. But also, along the way, I still couldn't believe that we reached this far. With Alexia, with everybody here, it's been not a honky-dory road, Of course, it was very difficult, even aligning the different thought, it was very difficult. But, we have a common purpose that this is not for Indonesia, this is not for United States, this is not European countries, this is not for Japan, this is for humankind. And we somehow come up with the same understanding that this is the only way to move forward to be unified. So in that regard, it's like, this is a great platform in which Pak Rahmat is, and along the way, we collaborate with the International Energy Agency. We do, even before designing the national electricity planning is a enigma, even inside the PLN. But now, it's becoming international collaborations. PLN, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, the Coordinating Minister of Maritime Investment, the International Energy Agency. We did the modeling in Paris. We did the modeling in Jakarta. We lay out the plan. We map out every single challenge. In each of the challenges we address in such a way, we come up today with what we call the accelerated renewable energy development. Why? We even come up with the idea. Not JETP per se, but the platform of JETP that unified the whole component, global communities previously fragmented to become unified. That's what the JETP is about. Applause for the JETP. Of course, along the way, we understand how we need to design environments that is conducive for collaboration. We understand we need to design environment that conducive for investment. We need to do the de-risking so that the investment is going to flow. We need to understand scenarios. What is the business as usual, the accelerated renewable energy development, what are the challenges? And then we came up with the comprehensive investment policy planning, even though we feel we are in the middle of redesign our national electricity planning. Exactly. On top of the CIPP. And in the new planning, 75% of the additional generation capacity that is going to be built from today until 2040 is coming from renewable energy. That is a very aggressive plan. And only 25% is coming from gas-fired power plants. And we are also signing an agreement retiring 600 megawatt of Cirebon power, expediting before 2042, 600 megawatt to become 2035, meaning this is early retirement of coal, avoiding of greenhouse gas emission, etc., etc. So for us, PLN, the JETP, is a platform that galvanizes the mindset, the paradigm of thinking, also the collaborations, and then giving us a sense of pride, a conviction that we're going to be able to keep moving forward. But also the JETP is giving us a sense of humility. Why? Because along the way we understand this is a fierce, grueling, long battle to combat climate change. And the long battle has just begun. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. You know, one of the, that was beautiful. One of the things that struck me is when we embarked on this, and Alexia, I'm going to turn to you, but when we embarked on this, it was Indonesia's country plan. That then we moved the JETP to look to various ways of financing it. But what's happened is this learning process, as you just said, because of the JETP, a better appreciation of the scale of issues, technicalities, and that has to reflect back into the financing. And so we're in a much better place as Indonesia, but collectively as part of the JETP process and where we go from there. Now, Alexia, you've had this great term, I remember, extreme collaboration. And that's been much of the theme thus far. And thinking about how we apply extreme collaboration to the financing instruments and the full range of financing instruments. Now that we have the launch of the CIPP, the learnings that have just been mentioned, and we move towards this phase of implementation. And you know, the United States and Japan, your leadership has been extraordinary, but through the IPG, where do we go from here, basically?
Thanks a lot. And I have to say, this is probably my favorite event of COP. I feel like I'm back with the family. And on this stage, but also so many faces in this room are part of this extreme collaborative effort. And I want to underscore, I mean, it's not collaboration for collaboration's sake. It really is around a bold vision to accelerate what usually is a multi-decade energy transition, to have it happen much faster. Yeah. And this energy transition is not just about the energy sector, it's actually about the whole of the economy, right? And so I think our Indonesian colleagues have always been clear with us that they need to see growth, inclusive growth in their country, and they need that needs to be coherent with the way we think about the energy transition. And so the collaboration, a lot of folks, and Mark, I'll get to the financing, but a lot of people talk about first and foremost the financing, aligning the financing. You have the 10 billion from the public sector, actually now higher than 10 billion, 11.5 billion. You have the philanthropic organizations, I see GAP in the room, and then using those two together, as you said, Mari, in your intervention, we should catalyze the private sector. So that's part of the collaborative piece. But I would say almost the more poignant part so far in the planning stage has been the brain trust collaboration. There are hundreds of experts from Indonesia, from the IPG countries and beyond, who have been part of actually doing the deep technical work to understand what an ambitious but implementable strategy can be, because that's what we're about. And so that has been, to me, the most fascinating part of this, the relationships, the learning that we've done together around this radical collaboration, and that we've done it in a very frank way so that it's not always hunky-dory, as you said, because we didn't mince words. We had robust debates about strategies. Is it about coal decommissioning? Is it about coal flex? I mean, there's not one path that we know yet, right? And we had those conversations incredibly openly. And then, around us, we had working groups. So we had the EIA helping us with the technical work. We had ADB helping us with the financial work, the World Bank with the policy reform, because that's a critical piece of the CIPP as well. And then we had UNDP working on the just part. So the infrastructure for implementation is there. We have the technical pathway on the energy side. We have the plan for the just piece. We know what the policy reforms are needed that will unlock more private financing, whether it's revamping requests for proposals, whether it's loosening local content requirements. We know all of that. And I think the question for all of us will be, how do we leverage these working groups that all report to the Secretariat for the implementation? Is it fit for purpose? Are certain tweaks needed? I think we're very open-minded about that. And then most importantly, I think now, and I think, Rahmat, you said it, perfection and movement. We need to see projects come through. There's been a little bit of money flowing. Sulawesi, we discussed, you're talking about the work that you're doing on Cirebon. We've had work on feasibility studies for energy. We have worked on microgrids. We talked about the geography in Indonesia. So we've done some work on microgrids to reach the smaller islands in the east of the country. So money has started to flow. I think that's a question that's often asked. But clearly, now we have the spark, the money, but then we need the policy reform so that we can really have the ignition that we need to truly deliver on the potential of the JETP.
Fantastic. Okay, fantastic. Donnie, I want to turn to you and the role of, we're joined at the hip. This is like extreme collaboration here, and Richard, we're together. Role of the private sector, learnings there, Standard Chartered at the very much at the front lines of this from the start, and given this new era, how do you see our role? And then, Tomo, I'm going to turn to you for your perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think, look, it's been said, right? The way that we see energy transition in Indonesia, I think Bill said it, that Indonesia, as a large emerging market, is also on the uptick sort of upward sort of trend because it's accelerating its economic development through industrialization, through downstreaming, digitalization, and so on. So we see that energy transition for Indonesia is actually a critical pathway towards having that sustainable economic growth as well as environmental stewardship. Now, we've been operating in the country for a long time. The way that we see is that JETP, and I like what Pak Darmo said, it's really actually, and also borrowing from Ibu Mari, it's about the co-co. It's about collaborating, and it's about co-creation, because ultimately, it can't be BAU or business as usual. We have been, many of our colleagues in GFANZ, the banks, the global banks, the private sector banks, have been investing in Indonesia, also in energy transition. But what we need, given the scale of the challenge, is very different, as we talked about. It requires something very different. I think Bill said, for example, that early decommissioning of coal-fired power plant. I mean, there's no model yet that we have to come up with. But it is part of the challenge. And I agree that Indonesia can be the blueprint. If that has resulted in success, I think actually that can be blueprint for many of the emerging markets in the world. Now, for us in Standard Chartered, the ambition that the government has, very clearly, actually very strong. I think Pak Rahmat actually has made it very clear. Indonesia is open. Indonesia is serious in its commitment. And that is very much aligned with us in achieving net zero. And we are committed. We fully recognize the scale of the financing that Indonesia needs, along with our colleagues of the private banks in GFANZ. And we stand committed to support that. Ourselves, actually, we committed to mobilize $300 billion by 2030 to help emerging markets transition in the world. And we will continue, and this is probably the key, actually, the way we see it, actually, of this JETP, is that collaboration very closely with the public sector. Because the key is that how do we find the most optimum structure of financing that can leverage more than the current one-to-one. It should be more than that, but that's the key, because the rest would be BAU, in our view.
Excellent, very good. Okay, so I'm going to go from the private to the public and go to you, Tomo. Again, let me thank, Japan has been a long-time development partner of Indonesia. You were the catalyst, along with the U.S. Treasury, for this JETP, which, as you just said, and Bill had said it earlier, that in many ways is breaking new ground and will be a blueprint for others. So it's important for Indonesia, therefore it's important for the world, but it's also important because it creates this opportunity for, as I say, a blueprint. So when you look at the infrastructure build, from transmission, smart grids, as Alexia just mentioned, mega hydro, geothermal, just a bit of your perspective, stepping back, Japan's perspective on these investments prospects. With a microphone.
Thank you, Mark, and apologies for being late. And
That's okay.
let me begin by offering my sincere thanks to everyone here. I feel like almost family with these members because over the coming years, we met almost once a month, or sometimes almost every week we met in the website. Again, I feel like real partners with you. This year marks the 50th anniversary year of the relationship between Japan and ASEAN, whose secretariat locates in Jakarta. Japan has forged strong ties with Indonesia for many decades and has been proudly a primary supporter in the field of infrastructure, industrial growth, and human resource development. And the CIPP has identified many projects to accelerate energy transition in Indonesia. There are several projects that Japan considers very important. Regarding the early retirement of coal-fired power plant, Chirebon 1, which is involved Japanese company, became the first MOU signing project under ADB's energy transition mechanism. And transmission and renewables projects are also critically important to advance JETP. For example, Sumatra Java interconnector transmission, Furais geothermal, and Maura Labo geothermal are examples of this important project. And Japan commits an estimate $1.7 billion financial contributions. GOJ and other related partners, such as JICA and JBIC, are ready to support JETP. However, support from Indonesia is also necessary for accelerating these projects. I believe that collaboration between Indonesia and Japan, including JICA and JBIC, on the ground level, will help promote this project. Japan will continue to work together with the United States and other IPG partners to accelerate these very important projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tomo. Alexa, can I come back to you? You know, the CIPP has identified over 400 priority projects that need to be initiated between now and the end of the decade. So, yes, time is of the essence. The roll-up of the investment requirements, and we all knew this to some extent coming in, that as big as the original 20 billion was, and the needs would be greater. Now we have, in a more tangible way, an identification, right, of some of those needs. So, your perspective, you referenced some additional funding. How do you think about additional funding for that within the context of the JETP and the existing model?
Absolutely. The needs are clearly great. I think we've estimated for just the on-grid needs about $97 billion. And so clearly that's huge, and clearly public sector financing will never, however generous everybody is, will never get us there. And so the private sector piece is fundamental. And I dare say I can see not only our hosts today, Standard Chartered, here, but I also see Citi in the room and a few other banks. And my sense is their pockets are deep enough. So, you know, what we've discussed with Pak Ratman and others is success brings success. What I mean by that is, let's get on with it. Let's start financing, you know, some of the first 50, 75 projects. Let's get going. Because frankly, there's a lot of money looking for good investments. And if we can deliver, based on the political commitment of the government, policy changes that are coming, that the environment works, I'm not worried about the money coming. If we want to see this 97 billion for on-grid on the table before we start, that's a recipe for disaster. Right. So we need to get going, keep the ambition high, I think it's fair to keep the public and the private sector and the philanthropic sector on their toes. But let's get started. And once success is there, I'm sure that additional money will flow. And I do think also the MDBs have a role here. I think, to your point, in terms of helping to bridge the public and the private financing, they've been important players, as I mentioned. But I think having the MDBs really line up their financing in the energy sector in Indonesia to the goals of the JETP can also be some of that lubricant that we need for the financing to flow. And then definitely we need to do some blending in terms of helping to reduce the cost of capital for the private sector. We need to make sure that the private sector is in a position to do non-business as usual deals that would not have otherwise happened. I think we need to figure out how to align different sources of financing so that the transaction costs for the government can be less when they're trying to put together a deal. Are there platform opportunities or portfolio opportunities that are available? These are some of the things that we need to think about as we move towards implementation.
Great. Absolutely. And I just to sort of round it out, Donnie, if I can come back to you, because private perspective on blending, on comparative advantage of public finance versus private, given the opportunity set here, what you've seen thus far, and maybe any observations or steers for our friends in the broader public sector of how they could best use their facilities in the context of a serious relook initiated by some of the major shareholders of the role of the MDBs and the instruments that they should be. I'm just throwing that out there that potentially some of this is in play, and so in real time, with real projects, I think this group, I'm pointing at you, but it really is more broadly in the room and beyond, not just can finance, but help shape how the system is going to work going forward. So this is part of your contribution. So from a private sector perspective, best use of public and blending in.
Thank you. But I think I speak for all of the other colleagues of the banks in GFANZ, as you know, that we do desire to have that right sort of structure, right blend and collaboration with the public sector. Remember, before JETP, we have been working on project-by-project basis across the world globe with the DFIs, the MDBs, as well as the ECAs of many companies, actually helping facilitate that financing for particularly countries where, emerging markets, actually, where pure commercial financing is probably more difficult. Now, in this specific JETP case, I think we have reached a critical milestone, a great milestone because of the CIPP launch. It's really a start. So we haven't quite done actually any of the financing, but soon enough that will be unlocked, we believe. So the way we see it is that I think if you look at the 5 investment focus areas within the CIPP that we got, some of them actually can probably be, purely commercially viable. Some others actually would be less, although highly transformative projects. Some others actually quite heavy lifting. And this is where the essence, I think coming back to what Pak Darmo said, that this JETP has put a structured approach of all the key stakeholders to facilitate and mobilize this much needed capital into where it matters the most, essentially, right? In this case, it's Indonesia, so the focus of accelerating net zero transition for Indonesia. So some of the commercial viable we can do. I'm sure actually the other colleagues actually, and even banks outside of JETP, I think we talked about that, because that model itself actually of the banks actually who are supporting the private sector financing, we will be very open. I think actually there's plan actually to open it up further to others, not just the 7 institutions that the original sort of founder, and create actually the scalability even more to different level. But on some of the more sort of less commercially driven, I think this is where we really need to sit down. We have started actually the work with quite a number, with ADB, for example, on the steerable project that involves a number of our private sector banks. But I think we need to step up the game. And the next part, what we need right now is to accelerate implementation. I think, Alexia, you mentioned that, let's do it now. But we need the process in which how we can blend all of this together, how we can get into the specific, because the CIPP actually with the projects provide a great roadmap, right? It sort of outlined the policy measures that would encourage investment, but at the same time, it creates the clear project pipeline. And that is a credible project pipeline is so critical in getting that financing going. So how do the process work of all the priority projects, where the timeline, and the RFPs, of course, Pak Darmo, to be issued, so that we can work on that. That's the real deal, actually, when we then put our minds together. But that's essentially actually what's ahead of us in the very near term.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we've got about a little less than 10 minutes left. So I propose this, which is, Pak Darmo, I want to come back to you, and specifically on the issue of grid. There's no transition without transmission. Issues about strengthening the grid, expanding the grid, grid interconnects. Maybe a more extreme version in Indonesia, but one that all our economies face, realistically. So get your perspective on what's required to unlock that. And then, Pak Rahman, I want to give you the last word for any other reflections you have. And then we have to have a photo since we're all part of the same family. So.
Well, Mark, first thing is I want to make a comment that because of JETP, then Indonesia designed and built green financing country platform. And because of JETP, then we also redesigned the regulatory framework. Because of JETP, we redesigned and how we approach designing a new projects and put on the CIPP. So this country platform is easily can be scaled things up, to address a much bigger, ambitious transition of energy. And that's the point I want to make. That is very important. And the second thing is this, of course, with this transition of energy, we face some kind of challenges. The first thing is the mismatch between the location of the large-scale renewable energy and the epicentrum of demand. And that's why no transition without transmission. That's why we are right now in the process of designing what we call the green enabling transmission line. With that new transmission line, Sumatra to Java, and then Sulawesi, and then also Kalimantan to Java, and then Nusa Tenggara to Java, we are able to add 32 gigawatt of hydro and geothermal into the power system of Indonesia. And then we also facing another challenge is that, this is also an opportunity. 4 years ago, the base load, coal, only 5-6 cents. Solar and wind at that time, 11-13 cents. But today, the base load is roughly 9 until 11 cents. And solar and wind is only 5-6 cents. So, meaning today, because of this kind of innovations, renewable energy is getting cheaper and getting more competitive. And adding solar and wind is going to reduce the overall levelized cost of electricity. But this is intermittent. This is variable renewable energy. That's why we need to also design and build smart grid. Price tag of smart grid is roughly $5 billion US. Transmission, green enabling transmission is roughly 15 until 20 billion US dollars. The total price tag for this accelerated renewable energy development until 2040 is roughly 152 billion US dollars. But in the same time, we're going to be able to provide affordable green energy that are going to sustain the rapid economic development of Indonesia. And in the same time, we're going to be able to build the national capacities, meaning to create more jobs, to give prosperity to the people, eradicate poverty, and in the same time, taking care of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, Pak Rahman, last word, and then I'll sum up.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I just want to quickly comment on the discussions between Alexia and Pak Doni here on the financing. So I think for us, we believe that there is enough money in the world to do this. It's just that what worries, so I'm not that worried about the quantity. I'm a little bit worried today about the quality, if you will. Because if you don't, we need to manage the way we finance it so that the projects that requires, for example, concessionals or grants can go to be done first. And then maybe like, on the commercially viable projects, maybe we can do private financing. Because unfortunately, we don't live in the unlimited resources, right? So we need to make some sort of arrangement, allocate it a little bit. So resource allocation is very important. And yeah, we need to, the good thing is that we have now certain visibility of what is available today, both on the supply and in demand side. So quick things to kind of closing from my side that like Indonesian energy transition has been an open platform. We want to involve people. And of course, this JETP partnership is a start. What we hope to be, very, very important, maybe the keystone. And of course, if any other people want to be in the journey of Indonesian energy transition, will be welcome. And we also hope that some of the lessons we learn in the process, I think could be quite valuable. We want to codify some of these learnings and then maybe share it. One thing that I keep saying is, maybe next time we do technical work first. And before we do all this, very high level thing, it will reduce stress. But maybe it's also good to, again, have a very strong boot camp drill sergeant to bark at you.
Exactly.
To ensure success. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Look, I think one thing that absolutely comes through in the experience, but even if you haven't been embedded in the process, what comes through clearly in the interventions, this excellent panel today, is the value of the process. And the huge value of the process thus far that actually puts and this is the most important thing, puts Indonesia in a position with a much better understanding of what needs to be done, much greater clarity, a much better sense of prioritization, a sense of cohesiveness, and with a built-in group that can help catalyze the financing that's necessary. Now, what needs to happen now is to flip to implementation, to build, if I may, on what Alexia said, I think we'd all agree, is do projects, do deals, do financing, focus on comparative advantage of various forms of financing. It was reinforced. I would include, we didn't have a chance to draw it out, but the official sector, particularly understanding the economics of managed phase out of coal, really understanding those and recognizing, yes, a role for concessional finance, but the scale of the issue and the importance of, in my judgment at least, energy transition credits or some form that would come from that to help balance. So really focusing in on those aspects and moving forward. And but I leave this as I expected to, and I always do when I'm engaged, with even more enthusiasm and confidence that your leadership, your personal leadership, and collective leadership of this group is going to get this done to the benefit of Indonesia, and as you said, Pak Darmo, the benefit of the UAE and the world, because it's for the climate. So I just say a big round of applause for the members here. Thank you very much.